So let us look at this year's Public Administration Paper 2, Indian Administration. So what are our basic impressions about this paper? It is very conventional. The questions are asked mostly from previous years, and the questions are also related to mostly current events. If you are good with your current events, you will be doing all the questions well. There are one or two questions which are you can say surprising ones, but that is what UPSC will do every year. One or two questions will always be from the topics which you have not studied. But again, they are also part of current events. That's what we have to remember. So let us look at all the questions, starting with the section A. First question, A part. Ethics in public services has been the main concern of Kautilya's Arthashastra. This was the question that they have asked in the previous years, and they have repeated the question. Ethics in public services has been the main concern of Kautilya's Arthashastra. As we have discussed in our classes also, we keep on saying that Kautilya was the first administrative thinker, first political philosophers to talk about good governance in public administration. He was the first thinker to emphasize on the concept of good governance, wherein he spoke about ethics in governance. So what did he say? He had come out with his famous dictum, in the interest of his subjects lies his interest, in their happiness his happiness. The king shall consider anything as good that benefits his subjects, and shall not consider anything as good that will benefit himself. This is the famous dictum which has to be followed, which is the basic norm for ethics in public administration. And Kautilya has said that the king should always look for the welfare of the people. He said that he should sacrifice his personal life for the welfare of the people. He also had come out with this again famous saying, Yatha Raja Tatha Praja. As is the king, so shall be the subjects. And he has also prescribed strict code of conduct for the king and the council of ministers. And he said that king should make himself available to the people all the time. And he said that king should always respond to the needs of the people. And he had also spoken about corruption. He said that absence of values in administration would result in corruption. And Kautilya was very pragmatic about corruption, and also pragmatic about how to remove corruption also. As part of ethics in public services, he also spoke about progressive taxation. And he also said that only 25% of the total expenses of the king should be spent on the salaries and other administrative expenditure. Remaining amount of money should be spent only on capital expenditure. And that is what you have to write for all these things. After writing all these things, you will say that as part of conclusion, Kautilya was also a very pragmatic political philosopher, apart from being giving emphasis to ethics in governance, wherein he said that king can use any kind of means, illegal or unethical, immoral means, to strengthen his position. That is what, as part of conclusion, you can write. Next, the Mughal administration was by nature centralized. Again, it is a very common question that UPSC keeps on asking all the time. The Mughal administration was by nature centralized. This is what again we kept on discussing in our classes all the time. The entire power was concentrated in the hands of the emperor. Basically, Mughal administration, we said, is a combination of Indian and Arabic elements, Indo-Persian, Arabic elements. In those traditions, Persian and Arabic traditions, the emperor was always treated as a descendant of God. He was almost equated to God. And all the powers were concentrated in the hands of the emperor, legislative, executive and judicial powers. And they had only spoil system. The empire was divided into provinces, And the provincial governors were again appointed by the emperor. Even the emperor had nobles working in the court, but again these nobles had limited powers. They could only give suggestions, and it is not mandatory for the emperor to accept those suggestions. And that was the reason why, as we have mentioned, as long as the emperor was strong, the empire was stable because of its centralized nature of administration. The biggest failure of Mughals was to create institutions that could withstand beyond the individuals. As we have mentioned, this is the lesson that the Britishers had learned. They created the institutions. They deliberately reduced the significance of individuals. They kept on changing the governor generals so that not a single person would become powerful. That is the lesson they had learned from the failure of the Mughal Empire. This is what you have to write for this question. Next, autonomy to public undertakings is a myth. Again, this is a statement we kept on saying in our classes all the time. So, public sector enterprises, we say, are broadly divided into these departmental undertakings, then corporations and companies. And what is the problem is that even though they were divided into departmental undertakings, corporations and companies on the basis of two factors, A and A, autonomy and accountability, but in the end, none of them had a real functioning autonomy or financial autonomy. They are still treated as an extension of the concerned ministries and departments, because appointment of directors is done by the ministry. Appointment of directors, managing directors, chairmen of this public sector enterprise is done by the concerned ministry. And they do not have any kind of freedom in spending their monies beyond a certain point. They do not have the freedom to fix the prices of their products. For example, railways are not given the freedom to fix the passenger fares. They are decided by the railway ministry. Even the railway board is there. The government had spoken about rail tariff authority, but it was never implemented. Similarly, oil marketing companies are always forced to bear the losses as and when the global crude prices go up. Food Corporation of India is always forced to bear the losses. And these public sector enterprises, they are forced to continue in spite of not having remunerative prices. And they don't have any hire and fire policy. That means they cannot remove the employees also. Labor reforms we have not implemented. They cannot remove the employees also. And they have to take permission from the government for simple investment decisions also. When these public sector enterprises had come into existence, as we have mentioned, the idea is that the government would restrict itself only to major policy decisions. It would restrict itself only to major policy decisions, and the day-to-day functioning is given to the public sector enterprise. But in reality, this has not happened. The government could not differentiate between what is a policy decision and what is day-to-day functioning. After writing all these things, as part of conclusion, you have to say that in the recent times, the government has come out with various reforms to provide more functional and financial autonomy in the form of these Navratnas, Mini Ratnas and Maharatnas. And then they are also given freedom to hire people, and in some cases remove the excess personnel also, excess staff also. And the government also has come out with the Banks Boards Bureau to appoint chairman and managing directors to public sector banks in a more transparent and accountable manner. That is what you have to write for this question. Again, all these questions are directly, they are very direct questions. Come to the next question. It should be People's Prime Minister's Office. It should be People's Prime Minister's Office, and it can't be Prime Minister's PMO. It should be People's Prime Minister's Office, and it cannot be Prime Minister's PMO. So what is the examiner trying to find out from you here? What he's trying to say through this statement is that Prime Minister's Office has become more of an extension of the personality of the Prime Minister, and it is performing functions which mostly strengthen the position of the Prime Minister at the cost of the welfare of the people. At the cost of the welfare of the people. As we said, as we studied in our classes also, a strong PMO can be a salvation for a Prime Minister, but it can directly go against the principles of collective responsibility of Council of Ministers. It can directly go against the principle of collective responsibility of Council of Ministers. And a PMO should be more democratized. PMO should function in a more open, transparent and participative manner. And that is the reason why, the question says that it should be people's PMO. It cannot be Prime Minister's PMO. The objective of a PMO should not be to strengthen the hands of the Prime Minister. That would ultimately lead to Prime Ministerial form of government. The objective of PMO should be to ensure resident-centric governance. That is what the question says. So what you say is that, again, these kind of questions you have to be a little bit more careful. You cannot be extremely critical of the PMO also. You can say that in the recent times, many efforts were made by the PMO to make it more democratic in nature. For example, PMO is from time to time inviting the suggestions, soliciting the opinions of people with respect to major policies. For example, when the Prime Minister is having his monthly Man Ki Baat, most of the time the subjects for the Man Ki Baat are taken directly from the inputs given by the people. Similarly, PMO is also inviting suggestions for major policy decisions of the government, where it is also inviting suggestions from the people regarding the implementation of the flagship schemes, so that they could be included in the future policies of the government. You have to talk about the measures. And PMO also has this program implementation division in the PMO, which carefully monitors the implementation of major flagship schemes of the government with the objective of citizen-centric governance. So you have to write all these things. In the end, you have to say that in democracy, perception matters more than reality. Perceptions matter more than reality. Since independence, Prime Minister's Office has become an extension of the Prime Minister rather than an organization to ensure citizen-centric governance. There can be more transparency, there can be more accountability in the functioning of a PMO to remove the perception that it is a Prime Minister's PMO and not a people's PMO. That is how you have to conclude your answer. So, next, implementation of GST has led to a paradigm shift in the center-state relations, both financially and politically. I think we have discussed this also in the class extensively. What is the paradigm shift in the center-state relations, both financially and politically? On the positive side, what happened? The state governments have been given assurance by the central government that in case of any shortfall in the revenues after implementation of GST, the states would be provided compensation by the central government in a true spirit of cooperative federalism. In true spirit of cooperative federalism, states would be provided financial compensation. Second, on the positive side, this GST, as we keep on saying, is an example of a cooperative federalism, because central government has agreed to most of the conditions put up by the state governments, like excluding petroleum products, liquor, tobacco products out of GST to protect their revenues. Again, on the positive side, the central government is willing to make changes to GST on the basis of the inputs provided by the GST Council. Since GST had come into existence, more than 1,000 changes were made to GST taxation rates by taking into consideration the inputs provided by the state governments, which is again an example of a cooperative federalism. And then, in the GST Council, the decisions are mostly taken on the basis of what is called unanimity. That means all the state governments as well as the central government would come to an agreement regarding changes to GST, which again is an example of cooperative federalism. But on the negative side, what is the problem? Again, a GST Council can be problematic in the future. Why? Because the functioning of the GST Council is such that it gives veto powers to the central government. Why? Because any decision in case of any conflict between the center and states can be approved by the GST Council only with 75% voting. All the states combined together have only 66.66% weightage. So automatically, even if all the states come together, they would not be in a position to get their demands met in the GST Council because of the veto powers exercised by the central government. And that is the reason why, as we have discussed in our classes also, the solution we say here is that let the GST Council mechanism be changed to bring it back to less than 50% or 50%. So that the state governments can also have a say in GST tax rates and also implementation processes. That is what you can write for this question. Again, all the things we have already discussed them in our classes. Next, the next question: National Data Analysis Platform of NITI Aayog facilitates a paradigm, a robust ecosystem to promote democratization and inclusivity in development. Discuss. Again, these are all, I said, one or two questions that UPSC will give all the time to show that they are also very working hard in framing the question papers. Right? This is a program that was started by NITI Aayog in the year 2022. So how to answer these kind of questions? Even though if you don't know anything about the question, you can still write very good answers. That is the best part of our UPSC examination. Let us assume that you don't know anything about National Data Analysis Platform, Data and Analysis Platform of NITI Aayog. But the answer is there in the question itself. This NDAP facilitates a robust ecosystem to promote democratization and inclusivity in development. Looking at the question itself, you can do the reverse engineering and come out with the answer. Right? This data and analysis platform. We need this data and analysis to frame policies, to implement policies, and also to review policies. So what do? I will start my answer with Herbert Simon, linking it to paper 1. I will start my answer with rationalist paradigm in public policy formulation. What do I say? I say that public policies can be successful only when they reflect ground level realities. As Herbert Simon says, intelligence activity, design activity, and choice activity. And we have a federal polity wherein both the union and the state governments have subjects demarcated for themselves, in which they can formulate policies. They can formulate policies. And most of the public policies in India are a failure because there is no authentic data, ground level information available with the departments and ministries related to the problems of people on a real-time basis. How to overcome this? How to ensure democratization of data and how to ensure inclusivity in development. That is when NITI Aayog has come out with this solution. Even though you don't know anything about the question, you are writing a very beautiful answer. You are writing a very beautiful answer because the answer is there in the question itself. As if you remember, as we discussed with MIS, Management Information Systems, what did we say? Raw data is available. Raw data is available at the ground level. This raw data must be transformed into structured information that is necessary for the ministries and departments to frame policies. And that is what exactly this NDAP will be doing. NDAP will be using this MIS, Management Information Systems, to convert, to transform the raw data into structured information that is needed for the ministries and departments. Not only that, this information is made available to all the state governments, because as we keep on saying, NITI Aayog will always act as a staff organization, that provides the much needed information to the central and state governments. That is the reason why we said that NITI Aayog is also an example of cooperative federalism. And this is what NDAP will be doing. And NITI Aayog also, the data collected by NITI Aayog through this platform is authentic, it is clear, it is simple, it is precise, and it is also up to date. So that this data can be used by the central and state governments, ministries and departments to formulate policies, to implement policies, and also to evaluate the performance on a real-time basis. That is what you have to write. As I said, even if you don't know anything, you will be writing a very good answer. And this data will be more in the form of an interactive mode, where in the form of graphs, in the form of tables, so that it becomes easier for you to read, understand and analyze also. That is what this platform will be doing, right? And I'll also give you some more information about this. As I said, even if you don't know anything, you're writing best answers. How? Bringing Simon, bringing a rationalist paradigm, bringing MIS, ensuring cooperative federalism, everything, right? Next, examine the impact on administration in view of changing relations between the political and permanent executive. Did we talk about all these things in our classes? How the relationship between the political executive and the permanent executive keeps on changing in Indian administration. If you remember, this is what we have mentioned. Between 1947 and 1967, what the country had witnessed was balanced polity, wherein political executive and bureaucracy would be performing their functions within their domains. Political executive would be formulating the policies, bureaucracy would be implementing the policies, and while formulating the policies, political executive would take into consideration values. While implementing the policies, bureaucracy would be implementing them strictly according to rules and regulations. And bureaucracy would be providing unbiased, impartial, meritorious suggestions to the political executive in policy formulation. This is where we have mentioned Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. He said that I want my secretary to say no to what I say and not to say yes. He is being paid by the government of India only to say no. And the first generation of politicians, were committed to the values that was reflected in the relationship between the politicians and bureaucrats, civil servants. After 1967, especially from 1970s onwards, what the country had witnessed was politicization of civil services. Politicization of civil services. Especially after 1975, when the then Prime Minister had given a call for committed bureaucracy, wherein she said that bureaucracy must be committed to the ideology of ruling political party in power. She felt that politically neutral bureaucracy has failed to implement her radical policies, and this led to the politicization of civil services. And it has continued. By 1990s, this politicization of civil services has spread to the state governments also, with the emergence of regional political parties at the state level. With the emergence of regional political parties at the state level, it led to politicization of civil services, at the state level also. Right? Then, what is the impact on administration? The impact on administration is that it has become inefficient. Its priorities have changed. Politicization of civil services, and it has become less responsive to the needs of the people. It has become less responsive to the needs of the people because at present we are witnessing a situation wherein political executive has become much more stronger, both at the central level as well as at the state level. As pointed out by Fredericks, the country is witnessing a neo-patrimonial bureaucracy. Neo-patrimonial. You have to bring in all these thinkers. Neo-patrimonial bureaucracy. Neo-patrimonial bureaucracy. On the positive side, political executive is rewarding those bureaucrats. It is rewarding those bureaucrats who have exhibited outstanding performance. Outstanding performance. But there are allegations of politicization of civil services. There are allegations of politicization of civil services. Right? Then as part of your conclusion, you have to talk about what should be done. How to depoliticize civil services. All those reforms you can write. We said that ex post accountability must be replaced with ex ante accountability. There must be security and stability of tenure to civil servants. For example, yesterday you must have seen, Supreme Court had sent notices to around 9 state governments because they have appointed ad hoc DGPs. We have discussed all those things also. In order to overcome the Supreme Court judgment in police reforms, appointment of DGPs, state governments are only opting for ad hoc DGPs. There you don't have to send the names to the UPSC, the three senior most police officers, empanelment. Nothing else will not be required. That is resulting in politicization also. That is the reason why we are saying that these reforms should be implemented. Then we also have said that this practice of post-retirement positions should be stopped because it takes away the political neutrality of civil servants, because they are looking for post-retirement positions when they become loyal to the political executive. You can write all those things. Next, decentralized planning enhances economic development and social justice. Analyze. As we have discussed, decentralized planning and bottom-up planning. How does it happen? if you remember, we have drawn that table also. You know, you have the district planning committee. 80% of the members are from urban local bodies as well as rural local bodies. Bottom-up planning, starting with at the lowest level Gram Sabha. From there, Mandal Panchayat. From there, Nagar Panchayats or Jilla Parishads. And then urban areas. Both the plans are integrated. Decentralized planning or bottom-up planning. And what is the advantage of this? As we keep on saying, you know, in India, one-size-fits-all approach has been a failure. One-size-fits-all approach has been a failure. So, what is required is a decentralized participatory development process wherein policies are formulated, programs are formulated at the lowest level by taking into consideration the needs of the people. And not only that, you know, in both urban and rural local bodies, reservations have been provided to scheduled castes and women, and in some states even OBCs also. Automatically it will also ensure social justice. And then talk about the reasons why decentralized planning has been a failure. Absence of political commitment, unwillingness on the part of the state governments to transfer funds to the local bodies, and unwillingness on the part of the central government to reduce the number of centrally sponsored schemes. Because it's only a 10 marker, you know, you can be writing only this much. Why? Because the next question is also the same thing. What is the next question? The role of the State Finance Commission, you know, in distribution of finances between the state and local governments is vital. Discuss. You know, the role of State Finance Commission, you know, in distribution of finances between the state and local governments is, you know, vital. So again, as we have mentioned, if you remember in the class also, that's what we keep on saying. This State Finance Commissions, UPSC keeps on asking almost every alternate year. So why it is very vital? Because local self-governments in India suffer from finances. Why? Because without finances, there cannot be any planning. Without planning, there cannot be any development also. As part of this 74th amendment, you know, Article 243, you know, this 243I and 243Y, you know, there shall be a State Finance Commission. And what it is supposed to do? Like the Central Finance Commission, vertical and horizontal devolution of tax revenues. Vertical between the state government and local governments, and then horizontal between the local bodies. And also grants in aid to be given to the local bodies. And any other matter referred to them by the governor of a state. But what are the problems? As we keep on saying, what are the problems? You know, if you go by, you know, 1992, constitutional amendment was passed. By 1995, all you know, state governments have implemented 73rd and 74th amendments. So by how many SFCs should have been constituted by the state government till now? 30 years, means 6 State Finance Commission should have been constituted. Till now, as we have discussed in our class also, very few states have constituted, you know, 5th State Finance Commission. You know, they have constituted, very few states have constituted this 5th State Finance Commission. If you, it says that you know, only 5 states have constituted 4th State Finance Commission. Only 5 states. You know, there are several states which have in the 3rd or 2nd Finance Commission only. Jammu and Kashmir has not yet constituted even 2nd State Finance Commission also. That is the reason why the government says removal of Article 370 can ensure more financial devolution to local bodies in Jammu and Kashmir. Right? So what the 74th Amendment says, what is in reality is completely different. What is in reality is completely different. Even in those states which have constituted the finance commissions, Finance Commission on an average has taken around 2.5 years to give their recommendations. On an average, they have taken 2.5 years to give their recommendation, almost 30 months, right? And after taking 2.5 years, in case of some states, fourth and fifth Finance Commission have taken 33 months to give their recommendations. 33 months to give recommendations for 60 months. What nonsense! They have taken 33 months, right? After of the 25 states, only Uttar Pradesh State Finance Commission, fourth State Finance Commission, has submitted its report on time. It has submitted a report on time, and in most of the states, there is huge amount of time difference, from 1 month to 60 months in terms of submission of reports. Late 1 month to 60 months. 60 months means the next Finance Commission also should have come into existence. And then, the delay is on an average 16 months for all finance commissions. Delay is average 16 months. And in case of 10 finance commission, it is more than 18 months also, right? And only 6 states, submitted their reports before the commencement of the Finance Commission recommendations. That means next year onwards, Finance Commission recommendation should come into play, and only 6 states have submitted the reports before the commencement of Finance Commission award. You can understand. All right. Then most of the states, as I said, only 9 states have constituted 6th State Finance Commission, out of which only 2 are active. Only 2 are active. All right. And then who are appointed as members of Finance Commission? Mostly politicians are appointed as members of Finance Commission, raising the credibility of these finance commissions. And then absence of infrastructure. Even though finance commissions are appointed, they do not have any infrastructure. For example, mostly what the governments do, some of the bureaucrats they don't like, immediately they will be made members of State Finance Commission. And most of them, that is what is happening in some of the states. Some of our students, that is what is happening. They don't have any office also to work. They don't have any office also. The state government says that work from home. That is what they don't show. And then, as I said, they don't have any staff also. That is the reason why they are taking so much amount of time. And then the recommendations of these finance commissions are not binding. The most important. In case of the central government also, Central Finance Commission recommendations are only advisory in nature, but they are accepted by the union government. Whereas in case of State Finance Commissions, they are not binding and they are only advisory. Most of the time they are not accepted also, right? And another problem is that there is less divisible pool available to the State Finance Commission to distribute the taxes to local bodies. This is what we say. On top of it, what are the other problems? Next problem, as we discussed in our classes also, elections are not held to local bodies. If elections are not held to local bodies, who will be getting the money? Even if State Finance Commissions are constituted, when the elections are not held to local bodies, who will get the money? Next problem, as I mentioned, is DPCs. District Planning Committees are never constituted. DPCs are never constituted. Next problem, as we mentioned again in our classes, is a huge number of centrally sponsored schemes. And what is happening with these centrally sponsored schemes? The local bodies would become only line agencies responsible for implementation of central and state government schemes. That is what we say. So next, center-state relations are undergoing a drastic change. Elaborate. So I think also we have discussed this so much in our classes, center-state. We have spent almost 1 week only on this. What are the drastic changes that are taking place? You have to talk about the positive, you have to talk about the negatives. So what are the positive changes that we have seen in our center-state relations in the last 10 years? In the last 10 years, what are the positive changes? Please remember the same question was asked in your GS paper 2 also, polity. If you have written already GS paper 2, you can always write that please refer to my answer in GS paper 2, polity. Same question, UPSC, Useless Public Service Commission, you are asking the same question, and give me marks also. God bless you. Right, same question was asked. Same thing, including the spelling mistake. Right. So what are the drastic changes? Positively, what are the changes that we have seen in the last 10 years? First one, as we have mentioned, is 14 Finance Commission recommendations, which have increased the share of the state governments all of a sudden from 32% to 42%. Second, dismantling a planning commission and replacing it with NITI Aayog, because that is one of the most important problems in center-state relations. Third, implementation of GST, which again is an example of cooperative federalism. Fourth, joint efforts made by the central and state governments to tackle once in a lifetime crisis like corona. Both central and state governments had come together and they tackled the corona disaster. Again an example of cooperative federalism. An example of cooperative federalism. Right? And then what are the other things negative? Next one is on the political side, governor's office have become more politicized. The office of governor has become more politicized. Second, misuse of Article 356. We have given all these examples in our classes also. Then, tendency of governors to use their discretionary powers in order to create problems for the state governments in terms of giving assent to the bills. Next, problems related to disaster management, disaster relief provided to the states. Disaster relief provided to the states. Next, tendency of the union government to impose cess and surcharge. Cess and surcharge in order to avoid sharing of revenues with the states. Next, huge amount of increase in a centrally sponsored schemes. Centrally sponsored schemes. And then tendency of the union government to pass legislations for subjects in the state list. For subjects in the state list. So this is what we say. And then we have provided the solutions also in the class. What should be done? Right? Again, that is what the next question also. Next question also the same thing. There has been a strain in a relation between governor and state governments in the recent past. You will say, please refer to my answer to the previous questions from 15th line to 25th line, because that is where you are talking about the governors. Right? So you have to give the examples of Tamil Nadu, Bengal, Kerala, Punjab and Telangana previously, and explain how it is creating problems. Supreme Court judgment, I think I have given all the things also, separate material also I have given to you, all the things. Right? You can write all the things. Very, very cute, innocent question. Right? We have provided the solutions also. All the innocent solutions you have to write. We have to implement a Supreme Court judgment in this S.R. Bommai case regarding the appointment of governors. And we can make changes to the constitution to fix accountability on the part of governors for the misuse of their powers. All those innocent, cute solutions you can write. Right? Next, public sector undertakings have been the bedrock of welfareism in India for many decades. Evaluate the pros and cons of current disinvestment scenario. Did we talk about this in our class? I said that definitely this question will be asked. That is what we keep on saying. There are so many black sheeps in our class. Right? So that is where the problem is. Again, this is what we have said. After 1991, we have opted for liberalization, privatization and globalization. Privatization means transfer of assets from the government to the private sector. So as part of privatization, we have two forms: strategic sale, which had become controversial. Second one is partial privatization through disinvestment after 1991. And we have mentioned in our class what are the objectives of disinvestment. We have said that the objective of disinvestment is to make public sector enterprises truly public as well as enterprising. Truly public as well as enterprising. Second, to use the proceeds of disinvestment to modernize the public sector enterprises. Third, you will be setting up a national investment fund and use the money to improve infrastructure. Fourth, use the money through disinvestment for social sector spending also. The basic idea behind this is that the government has no business to be in business. For a long period of time, we could not raise good amount of money through disinvestment because of political compulsions. Between 2004 and 2009, the government could not raise any single rupee through disinvestment because the government was supported by the left parties, and left parties were totally opposed. Between 2009 and 2014 also, it was a coalition government, so the government could not raise money because there was strong opposition from one of the coalition partners, DMK. In the first 20 years, we could raise only around 50,000 crores of rupees through disinvestment. But later, from 2014 onwards, with a single party rule, the government has speeded up the process of disinvestment. As we have mentioned, after 2014 also, in spite of having a single party rule, it has become problematic because of the market manipulations. Whenever the government wants to sell the shares, there will be deliberate underpricing of the shares of the public sector enterprise for which the government has announced disinvestment. The market will sell the shares so that they will bring down the prices. So the government could not raise the enough amount of money through disinvestment. The government had come out with a solution wherein it has asked one public sector enterprise to buy the shares of other public sector enterprise and transfer the money. The government was using basically the money raised from disinvestment to finance its fiscal and revenue deficits. And then we have provided the solutions also. And you have to add facts, all those things. I said that when the government was expecting 2 lakh crores of rupees, they could raise only maximum 35,000 crores of rupees through disinvestment. I have given all these facts. I will also give you all those facts. In fact, in the notes also, printed material, I had given those facts also. You can go through them. Next, the collegium system of appointments to higher judiciary has been the cornerstone of independence of judiciary. it has remained as the subject of debates in the recent past. Discuss. Again, also we have discussed so much. You have to go back, to the Constitution. You have to say that our constitutional makers rightly recognized the significance of an independent judiciary to ensure constitutionalism. And that is the reason why, there are many provisions in the Constitution that will protect the independence of our judiciary. And they have been given many powers, including security of tenure, and their salary and allowances are charged from Consolidated Fund of India to protect their independence. And the removal of judges is also almost impossible, because what is required is through an impeachment process, which is extremely difficult. But the appointment of judges had become controversial when, in 1973, the then Prime Minister has superseded many other judges to appoint her own favorite judge as the Chief Justice, after Supreme Court's judgment in the Keshwananda Bharti case. In 1975, the then Prime Minister had given a call for a committed judiciary. That led to more politicization of judiciary. Then Supreme Court responded with first judge case in 1980, and then wherein Supreme Court has accepted the argument of the government that in case of appointment of judges, the concurrent, it is the President who has the power to appoint the judges on the basis of the recommendations made by the judiciary. But in the second judge case in 1993, Supreme Court has changed its previous judgment. It has said that there will be a collegium consisting of the Chief Justice and 2 other judges, and the recommendations of the collegium should be accepted by the government. And then in the third judge case in 1998, Supreme Court has expanded the collegium to include 2 more senior judges. There will be 5 judges headed by the Chief Justice at the Supreme Court, and there will be 3 judges at the state high courts headed by the Chief Justice of the state high court that would decide the appointments, transfers and all other matters. But this collegium had become so controversial because of opaqueness in the appointment of judges. In order to overcome these problems, the government had come out with a solution in the form of NJAC, 99th Constitutional Amendment Act. But this NJAC was declared as unconstitutional by judiciary for violating the basic structure of our Constitution. Supreme Court has ruled that independence of judiciary is part of our basic structure. It has also argued that in more than 70% of the cases, government is the main litigant, so they cannot allow the government to have any kind of say in the appointment of judges. It also violated Article 51 of our Constitution, separation of executive from judiciary. And then after this, Supreme Court had come out with a solution in the form of MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. Still, it led to friction between the government and the collegium, because the government has rejected so many names in the name of national security. And Supreme Court had clearly asked the government to give the regions in a specific form rather than taking shelter under abstract term called national security. So this is what, now what is the solution? You have to write whatever we have given the solution. We said that ultimate solution lies in All India Judicial Service. And we have provided all the solutions in our class notes also. Very good, innocent, direct question. Right. Next, the concept of bureaucratic authoritarianism is one of the models of non-democratic rules. Explain. As I keep on saying, the answer for all these kind of questions will be there in the question itself. Non-democratic rules means dictatorship. In case of dictatorship, what we witness is bureaucratic authoritarianism. Why? In non-democratic rules, there is no accountability of the ruler towards the citizens. Why? Why there is no accountability? The ruler is permanent. There are no elections. And what about the bureaucracy? Bureaucracy is appointed by the ruler through spoils system. Through spoils system. Then what happens? Bureaucracy would only be accountable to the ruler, and the bureaucracy won't be accountable to the to the people. That is what is called bureaucratic authoritarianism. Bureaucratic authoritarianism. Why? Because this is what happens, because their promotion, their transfer, their postings, everything will be decided by the political executive, which is a dictatorship, and they will only reward loyalty and nothing else. And nothing else. That is where the problem. Then you give the examples. You give the examples of in a communist China, Soviet Russia, North Korea, India, sorry, no, not India, and African countries, Latin American countries, and Central Asian republics, then Middle East countries. That is where you can give the example. So what is the solution? You need democracy to ensure bureaucratic accountability. Next, constitutional status, stature. I think it should be status. Take it. Spelling mistake, maybe. Constitutional stature provided to the public service commissions accorded them the autonomy to work towards fair recruitments. Comment. Again, our constitutional makers have recognized the importance of fair recruitment processes to bureaucracy. Why? Why? Because bureaucracy in our democratic systems is a part of a permanent executive. They are expected to perform their functions in an impartial, unbiased, independent manner. And the recruitment has to be fair without any scope for interference by political executive. And that is the reason why our constitutional makers have accorded constitutional status to these recruiting bodies. Articles 309 to Article 318 talk about this provisions related to the you can say Article 323 talk about provisions related to the functioning of these commissions, especially from Article 315 to 323. Article 315 to 323. Right? And this include articles related to the state public service commissions also. Related to the state public service commissions also. But what we say here is that in the recent past, there are some criticisms against the state public service commissions. Why this question was also asked? Because of what happened in UPSC recently also. The chairman of UPSC has resigned because of the controversy related to the appointment of this IAS officer. That is the reason why this question was asked. And that is the reason why at the state level also these appointments to state public service commissions had become part of spoils system. In some states, even those who were appointed as members are who have not even cleared their 10th standard also. They are expected to evaluate the performance of those who are getting into state public service commission, politicization. In Punjab, all the state public service commission was suspended and criminal cases were filed against the chairman as well as members on corruption charges. In most of the states, the same thing happened wherein they were forced to cancel the examinations because of corruption. And that is the reason why we say that recruiters need to be reformed also. There must be what is called transparent, efficient and accountable recruitment process, wherein the members are appointed not because of their political affiliations, but on the basis of their qualifications and merit. That is what you have to write here. Right? The neutrality of civil services. The neutrality of civil services has become a myth. The neutrality of civil services has become a myth. So what do we mean by that? Again, same question. We are almost writing the same answer for all the questions. Right? Here, again, go back to the Constitution. Our constitutional status makers have envisaged a balanced polity wherein there is clear-cut division between the powers and functions of political executive and permanent executive. At the same time, they also have ensured healthy coordination between the political executive and bureaucracy. There are constitutional provisions that will protect the neutrality of civil servants. Articles 309, 310 and 311. But over a period of time, this neutrality of civil services is becoming a myth, because political executive using various instruments to seek the loyalty of the civil servants in the form of promotions, transfers, postings, suspensions and post-retirement positions also. Again, you write all those things, and what should be done also you can write. This is so much discussed in the classes that it becomes almost you can write these things with your left hand in your dreams also. Right? Examine the role of TRAI in protecting the interests of consumers. Every year they will ask one question related to a regulatory authority. Last year it was SEBI, this year a TRAI, before that Competition Commission of India. Other year they will talk about NHRC, other way they talk about NCW or IRDA, PFRDA. So what is the objective of TRAI when it had come into existence? Basically to ensure universal mobile linkage, to provide mobile services to the last mile, that is the person who is at the bottom of the pyramid. Second, to provide quality services. First one is universal coverage. Third, to provide quality services. Third, at affordable prices. Fourth, to protect the interests of the consumers. To protect, this is what you have to write for any other regulatory authority. You replace TRAI with SEBI, same thing. To protect, to protect the interests of the consumers. Next, to provide effective grievance redressal mechanisms. To prevent the emergence of monopolies. To prevent the emergence of monopolies. To ensure level playing field. And what about the performance of TRAI? TRAI's performance has been excellent in terms of the first few functions: universal coverage, providing quality telecom services, and providing services at affordable prices also. Right? But in other aspects, its performance has been mixed. It has not been able to prevent the emergence of oligopolies in the telecom sector. The reason can be because these kind of sectors require huge amount of investment, especially due to emerging technologies. For example, what is the reason why Anil Ambani had become bankrupt overnight? Anil Ambani's when Mukesh Ambani and Anil Ambani were together, Reliance has launched this Reliance Infocom, wherein they were providing mobile phones and mobile services also. But the problem is that the technology was different. GSM technologies. In GSM technologies, you can have only 1G and 2G. 3G and 4G services are not available, and that requires CDM technologies. And that is the reason why all of a sudden Anil Ambani had become bankrupt. He had lost all the major market share, and it requires huge amount of investment to change from GSM to CDM technologies. And that is one of the reasons why we are witnessing oligopoly in the telecom sector. You cannot be blaming TRAI all the time, because it requires huge amount of investment. That is the reason why very few of them have survived, like Airtel. Vodafone Idea also is surviving only because of the incentives given by the government. Otherwise it would have collapsed also. Reliance Jio, it has indulged in predatory pricing. That is where TRAI could have been a little bit more effective. You can write all those things. Next, parliamentary control over public expenditure is declining. I think we have also discussed this thing in our classes. Why parliamentary control over public expenditure is declining? We have only line item budgets, and budgets are mostly guillotined. That means they are passed without any discussion or debate on the floor of the House. Parliamentary committees also have been less effective, and we have only cash-based accounting systems, wherein the governments manipulate the budgets, and there is so much of secrecy in the entire budgeting process, and the recommendations of parliamentary committees are only advisory in nature, and the job performed by CAG was only post-mortem in nature. And we have provided all the solutions also in the class. You can write all of them. I think I have given the same question also in our test also. Right? Yes. Next, LPG has enhanced the participation of private sector in Indian economy. Comment. Definitely we will say that it has enhanced participation of private sector in Indian economy. It has definitely. Right? If you go by that, after 1991, we have seen huge amount of private sector in all key sectors of Indian economy. You name it: petroleum, power, coal, iron and steel, telecommunication, then this cement. You name it in all these sectors. And we also have seen rapid strides made by the private sector, especially in the service sector. Thanks to the private sector participation, India is one of the largest exporters of software services. We also are witnessing a huge amount of participation of private sector in financial sector also, in banking, in terms of insurance, in terms of pensions, and in other financial sector also. And we also have seen rapid expansion in the scope of our these stock markets also, including secondary markets. And we also have seen private sector investment going up in these key infrastructure projects like this National Highway Development Program. And we are witnessing private sector investment even in railways also. You have to talk about all these things. After writing all the things, you have to say that on the negative side, we are witnessing dangerous monopolies in key infrastructure sectors, which can damage the economic growth rate of the country in the long term. The government must prevent the emergence of monopolies, prevent crony capitalism, and ensure free and fair functioning of the markets. The regulatory mechanisms have to be strengthened to prevent this emergence of monopolies. Today, if you happen to see, our finance minister has said that regulatory mechanism in India is very robust, and people are unnecessarily making allegations about some of these regulatory authorities out of political motives. Basically, the criticism against the chairman of SEBI. Then let us move on to the next question. The success of administrative reforms in a country like India depends on political will. Again, the same thing that we have discussed in our class also. So what we have mentioned is that administrative reforms can be implemented through demand side factors or through supply side factors. Supply side factors means the government implementing the reforms on its own, without any pressure from the people. Supply side factors means people are demanding reforms and the government coming under the severe pressure from the people implementing reforms, right? Demand side and supply side. If you look at administrative reforms in India, maximum number of administrative reforms have become successful only because of political commitment. At the end of the day, political commitment is required. Why? Because most administrative reforms have political costs. Why the reforms are not implemented? Because political executive has to pay a very heavy price for implementing the reforms. That is the reason why they are not implemented by the political executive. So coming back to this question here, what are those reforms which have been implemented by the government that had become successful because of political will? For example, in 1991, these economic reforms, LPG, was implemented by the government only because of the political will shown by the political executive. We have dismantled the license quota permit Raj. We have given complete freedom to the private sector. We have opened up our economy to the rest of the world in spite of many stiff opposition to these reforms. The government had shown the political commitment, the P.V. Narasimha Rao government and Manmohan Singh. Then in 1992, we have passed this landmark legislation, 73rd and 74th amendments, political decentralization of power. Then we also have implemented technology, e-governance. Then we also have implemented this rights-based approach to development. As part of this, we have come out with this right to education, right to work, right to employment, right to health, rights of forest dwellers, right? Tribals and forest dwellers. Again, these reforms had become successful because of political commitment. And similarly, during the corona crisis, the government has used the crisis to implement most of the reforms. Basically, Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan. The government also has drastically reduced the corporate taxes to make our private sector competitive. The government also had come out with PLI schemes, production linked incentives, to again make our private sector competitive and also to realize the objectives of self-reliance. All of them had become successful because of political commitment. On the other hand, there are so many reforms which remained mostly on paper in spite of the fact that they have been implemented for a long period of time, like citizen charters, like right to information, like social audits, like civil services reforms. Ultimately, we say that in a democracy, what is needed is political will. Since the politicians are not willing to implement, what is required is creating awareness among the people. Once awareness is created among the people, people will demand the reforms, then the political executive will have no option but to implement the reforms. That is what you have to write. Next, the journey of transformation of local governance has been long. Examine the challenges to realize the spirit of Gram Swaraj. 73rd Amendment. From 1992 till now. What are the challenges? As we have discussed. Starting with the Gram Sabha. We have talked about all the problems related to Gram Sabha. Then the participation of women. Reservations for women has only resulted in proxy rule. Then reservation for scheduled castes also has resulted in proxy rule. Then the problems with the functions, functionaries and finances. Then we have added one more problem in the recent times, functionality. Then emergence of community-based organizations in rural areas that have challenged the authority of local self-governments. Then after more than 30 years of implementation, the local self-governments have remained local in form but state and central in content. Unwillingness on the part of the central government to reduce the number of centrally sponsored schemes, and the failure of the state finance commissions, and then politicization of development process at the local level, and this local self-governments have not resulted in citizen-centric governance, because still it is only the people elected representatives that are ruling without active participation of the stakeholders. And the attitude of bureaucracy, colonial attitudes of our bureaucracy. So all those things you can write and you can provide the solutions also. Again, a very direct question, right? Next, with what aims and objectives was the capacity building mission was established? Evaluate how far it has come in realizing the goals. As part of mission Karma Yogi, the government has come out with this capacity building mission, to improve the capabilities of civil servants. As I said, in 2021, the government had come out with this mission Karma Yogi. The objective is to improve the capabilities of civil servants, to make them efficient, accountable, transparent, proactive, creative, innovative, technology enabled and outcome oriented. The objective is to move from rule-based to role-based governance. The objective is to improve both the skills and knowledge, and also to impart the necessary values. That is where this capacity building mission has come as part of mission Karma Yogi. The objective is to provide training to 46 lakh civil servants, and as I have mentioned, the government would be spending around 5-10 crores of rupees over a period of 5 years also as part of this capacity building mission. Basically, it is an online training program through what is called IGOT platform. IGOT. What is this IGOT? Indian Government Online Training Platform. Government Online Training Platform. So, and this capacity building mission, it has Prime Minister's Human Resources Council and capacity building mission. Basically, it will be providing training to the civil servants, as we have discussed in our classes. 3 important things: work, second one is workplace, third one is worker. It focuses on all those 3 things. That means how to make work more challenging, more interesting. What kind of changes should be made at the workplace, so that the seniors would be providing guidance to the juniors. Right now, what we are witnessing is what we have studied with the Taylor scientific management theory, the trade secrets are never revealed by the seniors to the juniors because of the absence of trust between the superior and subordinates. The workplace focuses on having a friendly and better atmosphere at the workplace, wherein the scope for mistrust is replaced with a mutual faith and coordination. The seniors should be acting as mentors to the juniors by providing them with the necessary skills, knowledge and leadership also. And what about its performance? The performance, we still don't know how it is, how it has performed. The government would be setting up a special purpose vehicle for this, and you have to say that the performance has been very good. Beyond that, we don't know anything. We don't know anything. That is what we can say, because even if you go there, Ministry of Personnel also, you don't get any kind of performance. You have to remember, you have to talk about the objectives and say that most of these objectives have been achieved. Right? Next, separation of police investigation from prosecution has its own benefits and challenges. Analyze in the context of recent developments. What is this question? This is more of a question for law students than administration students. Separation of police investigation from prosecution has its own advantages and disadvantages. Right? So what do you mean by that? Investigation from prosecution, what does it mean? What police would be doing? They would be conducting investigations into cases. Then, who will be arguing there in the courts? Prosecutors, again appointed by the government. What you call them as a PP, public prosecutor. And what do they do more often than not? They take the side of the police. And this results in so many complicated problems. Why? Because you cannot expect these public prosecutors to be impartial and unbiased. More often than not, what we see that these public prosecutors are always taking the side of the government in spite of the fact that what they are arguing is wrong. And this makes the delivery of justice, more difficult also. Delivery of justice. It also results in what is called delay in a delivery of justice, because prosecutors coming under the influence of the investigators can demand more adjournment from judiciary to deliberately delay the cases also. And since the state is very powerful, state can use all its resources to suppress the truth also, and prosecutors more often than not will have to side with the state in spite of knowing the fact that they can be wrong. And where did this started all the time? Where did it start? It had its origins in a CRPC, Criminal Procedure Code, which had come into existence in 1861, which was later amended in 1973. At that point of time, the British government deliberately combined both these functions, investigation as well as prosecution, because most of the so-called criminals were the freedom fighters. So these investigators can fabricate the evidence, prosecutors can argue the cases, and the punishment can be meted out. After independence, many efforts were made to separate this investigation from prosecution. For example, in 2005, amendment was made to section 25A, wherein this prosecution should be separated from police, and it should be under the administrative control of Home Ministry at the state level in 2005. So that these prosecutors will not come under the undue influence of the investigative authorities. It is said that this Directorate of Prosecution must be under the control of the Home Ministry of state governments. But what happens here is that even if it is implemented, they will be under the influence of the State Home Ministry, wherein the State Home Ministry also controls police forces. It can result in conflict of interest because the State Home Ministry has the responsibility to protect the police. So if the State Home Ministry is also controlling the prosecutors, there is every possibility that police can easily influence the prosecutors also. That is the reason why appointment of prosecutors should be belonging to both the central and state governments, and it should be done in such a manner that the judiciary is consulted before appointing the prosecutors in order to prevent what you call biasness and prejudices on the part of prosecutors, because we need independent prosecutors. And then under the section 24(8) of CRPC, the government has the discretion to appoint special public prosecutors, but again it could lead to what is called politicization of the entire legal process. And another problem here is that if there is they are separated, prosecution and investigation, it can lead to conflict between prosecution and investigation. It can also result in more delays in delivering justice also. So what is the ultimate solution? The ultimate solution that police may consult a prosecutor during the investigation, but there should not be any statutory compulsion for the police to consult the prosecutors or prosecutors to consult the police. That means prosecutors should be given the freedom, and their appointment should be done in consultation with the judiciary, and prosecutors should be made independent of police so that they can focus more on protecting rule of law than on protecting the state. That is what you can say. And I have given all this in the notes also. You'll be getting this everything. Next, lack of financial resources and independence in managing local funding is hindering the economic and social development of urban areas. Discuss. As I said, the question will definitely come: urban finances. Urban finances. What are the problems with urban finances? We have discussed all of them. The recommendations of state finance commissions are never implemented. State finance commissions are not constituted. Then urban local bodies, are indulging in political populism. They are providing free subsidies, irrigation, water, everything. Then, there is no transparency in urban local bodies in terms of spending their monies, because they do not have any outcome budgets. They do not have accrual based accounting systems also. In countries like United States of America, urban local bodies generate more than 70% of their revenues. On the other hand, in India, it is less than 3% of their revenues. Rest of the money they depend on central and state governments for their survival. And after the implementation of GST, they have very less chances of earning money on their own also. And as we have mentioned, we need 100 lakh crores of rupees to improve urban infrastructure. And then, urban local bodies also do not have what is called sustainable development plans as part of smart cities. Again, most of the schemes like smart cities and Amrit have not been successful because of the failure to establish institutions. I gave you the example. In the year 2018, the government has allocated 8,700 crores to the state governments to be spent on a smart city scheme. All the states combined together had spent only 167 crores because the state governments did not come out with any plans regarding how to spend those finances. And this lack of finances is creating many problems for urban local bodies because they are expected to perform many functions, including maintenance of roads, drainage systems, then urban lighting, maintenance of these urban educational institutions, municipal schools, and also hospitals, and also protecting the ecological system, sustainable development, reducing the pollution, transportation. When they are performing so many functions, they simply did not have sufficient finances, which is coming in the way. On the other hand, the government has schemes like this Amrut, and also schemes like smart cities, wherein the government would be spending around 1 lakh crores of rupees over a period of 5 years. 50,000 crores on Amrut and 50,000 crores of rupees on smart cities programs. And what is required is 100 lakh crores. Where do you get the remaining 99 lakh crores? We have provided the solutions. First and foremost, we have mentioned that the recommendation it should be made mandatory for the state governments to set up the state finance commissions. The state government should not be given any kind of freedom. It should be made mandatory like the central government. Second, elections should be held to these urban local bodies on a regular basis. Most of the time, the state governments prefer to rule these urban local bodies with the help of bureaucracy than with the people elected representatives. Third, in the state budget, there should be a separate window for local bodies, so that these local bodies will come to know what is the amount of money they are going to get from the state government for the coming financial year. Certainty regarding the revenues. Next, we have mentioned that urban local bodies must end political populism. They must cut down all those populistic subsidies. They must implement NPM. They must charge minimum amount of money for the services they have provided to the people, especially electricity, water, then drainage, everything. They must charge minimum amount of money. They must cut down all their populistic subsidies. Urban local bodies must also look at maximizing their revenues from imposing house tax, because again in urban local bodies, in the name of political populism, they do not impose taxes also. In a city like Delhi, political parties are promising abolition of house taxes also. And then we have also mentioned that it should be made mandatory for all urban local bodies to adopt accrual based accounting systems. Then they must also make their entire accounts public. There should be transparency in their spendings. They must also adopt outcome budgets. Next thing we have mentioned is that urban local bodies must also look for revenues by issuing municipal bonds. We also have mentioned that the central government has a huge amount of unused assets, like railways sitting on huge amount of land. Public sector enterprises also have a huge amount of land. BSNL has excess land worth more than 1 lakh crores. If it is sold, the government can use that money to improve urban infrastructure. Then urban local bodies also can tap revenues from multilateral institutions like World Bank and IMF. They can get either loan or aid. We have provided all those solutions. Right? Please remember, last year the same question was asked in your polity governance paper. They are repeating the same thing. Next, NIA is playing an important role in countering terrorism. As I said, NIA was asked 3 years back. Again, the same question they have asked. This NIA has come into existence after 2008 Mumbai terror attack. The government felt that they needed an agency that would tackle all these terror threats, because 2008 terror attacks have clearly proved that there is no proper coordination between various agencies. That is the reason why this NIA has come into existence. It basically deals with problems related to terrorism, militancy, insurgency, left-wing extremism, and cross-border attacks also. And it also looks into other things like this drugs, narco terrorism. It also looks into fake currencies and cyber crimes and other financial crimes also. And what else does NIA do? It also has acts as a storehouse. It will collect all the information about the criminals and their activities, and it will provide this information to the state governments as and when it is needed, so that the state governments can also be proactive in terms of preventing the terror attacks. It also ensures better coordination between the central agencies and the state governments also. What about the performance of NIA? Since it had come into existence, it has registered and investigated 315 cases, and 60 cases they have completed their trial, and in 54 cases they got conviction, and success percentage is 90%. All this information is available on the NIA website. You can write all of them, closing your eyes without asking for any proof. You can write all of them, right? Next, police public relations are poor in India. What measures are required to strengthen these relations? That also we have discussed so much also. What are the reasons why police public relations are very poor in India? Why police public relations are very poor in India? Why? Because India has inherited colonial administrative structures. This Indian Police Act 1860-61, CRPC, IPC, Indian Evidence Act, all of them had come into existence to benefit an imperial power and to subjugate the native citizens to the interests of the imperial power. Again, as I have mentioned, Britishers have introduced what is called Irish police systems in India. On the other hand, in their country, they had British systems wherein police was called a service, whereas in India, it is a force. After independence, what happened? After independence, Constituent Assembly also discussed whether to continue with these services or not, especially the police officers, because all the members of the Constituent Assembly suffered in the hands of these highly dictatorial, egoistic police officers. Even though they were Indians, they made sure that the freedom fighters were put to lot of trouble. That was the reason why Constituent Assembly members were totally against continuation of this police. But because of the insistence of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, we continued with the same police force. The only change that had taken place after independence was, there was democratic control over functioning of the police forces. People elected representatives now started controlling police forces. Otherwise, the same system continued. What is the system? Rank classification, dominance of IPS officers, and complete absence of accountability of police personnel. Police would be treating people as only subjects to be governed, but never as citizens to be administered. And then there is a lot of suspicion between the police and the citizens, because police during the colonial times were asked always to view ordinary people with suspicion, because they were asked to believe that every Indian was a freedom fighter, every Indian was a revolutionary. That is the kind of suspicion, absence of trust. After independence, we have continued with the same system, same attitudes also. After independence, police started serving the interests of those who are in positions of power than the people. Especially poor people are viewed with suspicion by the police. And people believed that police as a force is there only to protect and promote the interests of rich and powerful sections of society. That is the reason why the question is asked. They are very poor. On the other hand, after independence, we have seen many crimes committed by the police. Corruption, fake encounters, then lock-up deaths, torture in lockups, and kidnappings and land grabbing by the police, because of the kind of power they have without any accountability. And that is the reason why most of the reforms have remained only on paper. Supreme Court had come out with the judgment in Prakash Singh case to make sure that there is a autonomy and accountability of police personnel. And the central government has set up this Dharamvira Commission after emergency to look into the police reforms, but they have not been implemented. And in the recent past, the government had come out with initiatives like community policing, but they also have failed. So what should be done? First of all, we have to implement the reforms in the functioning of the police. As the second ERC suggested, the word force should be replaced with service. Police should be the service, like other services provided by the government, revenue services, registration, education, health, drinking water, sanitation. Police should also be a service but not a force. Then there must be accountability mechanisms in case of excesses committed by the police. There should be depoliticization in the functioning of the police, and they must focus on efficiency in terms of implementing the reforms. Then as we have said, there should be state complaints authority, district complaints authority to look into the excesses committed by the police, so that police will be in a position to regain the credibility among ordinary citizens. For example, we can do one thing. We can change the dress of the police also. The dress that they are wearing now, the color, right? It is a colonial and it denotes power. You can change it to something more peaceful one. And when you talk about one country, one system, let the police all over the country, irrespective of the state, also will be wearing the same dress. Right? As I said, there should be CCTV cameras in the police stations, in the lock-up rooms. Recently also, as we have discussed also, in Maharashtra, suddenly the criminals who are caught, either suddenly they commit suicide, or police are forced to kill them under unavoidable circumstances. Recently, Bombay High Court also has said, how can a person who is so lean, who is not a criminal, can snatch the weapons from the police? Fake encounters. Right? That is the problem. The office of a CAG and its functioning is away from the public eye. Still, it is one of the most important offices under the Constitution discussed. Again, our constitutional makers have recognized the importance of CAG. Why? Because wherever there are finances, there is always a scope for misuse of those finances. And one of the important aspects of public administration, features of public administration, as we discussed, is external financial control. That is the reason why CAG was made an independent constitutional body. The CAG was also given security of tenure. It was also given the most important responsibility of evaluating the performance of the ministries and departments, and also submits its reports to the government. But over a period of time, CAG's performance has not been up to the mark. What are the problems? We have discussed all the problems. We have mentioned that the recommendations of CAG are only advisory in nature. CAG performs a job which is post-mortem in nature. Under CAG Act 1971, CAG can audit the performance of ministries and departments, but not of developmental and welfare schemes. Similarly, under CAG Act 1971, CAG cannot audit the performance of public-private partnership projects, performance audit. Since we have only line item budgets, CAG audit is restricted only to regulatory audit and legal audit. In some cases, it can conduct performance audit, but social audit, auditing done by the people, is completely absent. And then we have mentioned that the government normally do not table the reports of CAG, because most of the time reports are critical in nature. And we also said that the services of CAG are available only to Public Accounts Committee. And the most important problem, we have only line item budgets also. CAG cannot conduct concurrent audit. It will only conduct post audit, right? And another thing we have mentioned is that in United Kingdom, CAG is Controller and Auditor General, whereas in India, Comptroller. The difference is that in United Kingdom, CAG can control public expenditure before it is being spent. That means the budget of the government has to be approved by CAG before it is being tabled on the floor of the house. In India, Comptroller. That means CAG will come into the picture only after the monies are spent. Even though CAG conducts what is called propriety audit, but most of the recommendations of CAG remain only advisory in nature. Then we spoke about what should be done, all the reforms, right? Next, critically examine the problems of administration in coalition regimes. This also we have discussed in our classes. What are the problems of administration in coalition regimes? First and foremost, formulating policies can be a difficult exercise. Why formulating policies can be a difficult exercise? Because coalition partners coming from different political ideologies, and especially if it is a post-poll coalition, then it becomes that much more difficult, because ideological differences can come in the way of formulating policies. Second, Prime Minister will not have the power to select ministers and allocate portfolios to them, because it will be decided by the coalition partners. Third, it can result in policy paralysis, because major policy decisions will not be taken by the government. Fourth, it can lead to a soft state. That means the state is not willing to take tough policy decisions. Next, the Prime Minister will be forced to spend maximum amount of time on survival than on governance. Because he will be spending most of the time only in pleasing the coalition partners, because if one of them withdraws the support, government would fall. Next, it is inherently unstable, because any coalition partner withdrawing support, it can lead to more fresh elections. Inherently unstable. And then, as we have discussed also, cabinet secretaries and chief secretaries will not have control over bureaucracy, as we have discussed also. Cabinet secretary and chief secretaries will not have control over bureaucracy. Why? The secretaries would be loyal to their political masters. There will be more indiscipline in the functioning of bureaucracy also. Right? You have to write about all of them. And what should be done? In a coalition, experiment can be successful only when it is a pre-poll alliance with a strong, powerful leader controlling the coalition. Pre-poll alliance with a strong, powerful leader controlling the coalition, and more importantly, the leader of the coalition should also be the leader of the political party. Why? Because in the case of UPA government, the problem was the leader of the coalition was different and leader of the political party was different. Leader of the government was different and leader of the political party was different. That is what we have to write. As you can see here, except for maybe one or two questions, rest of the questions are very, very easy. All the questions are very easy, except for one or two questions. Out of how many questions? Around 5 plus 5, 10, then 12 plus 12, 24. Out of 34 questions, maximum one or two questions we can say as not difficult, different questions out of 34. Remaining 32 questions you can easily answer. Even the question about this NITI Aayog and National Data Center, that you can answer beautifully without knowing what the answer is also. Right? That is the best part of our Indian administration. And all these questions were asked in your GS Polity Governance papers, all of them. So this is what it is. I think that should be more than sufficient. And I will also put this additional information in our group also about this NDAP, about separating investigation from crime prosecution, about NIA, all these things I will put them in our Telegram group. Right? I think that should be more than sufficient.